Not all childhood wounds leave bruises. Some leave silences. Some leave a strange emptiness that you can't explain, even when you're around people who love you. Maybe you grew up thinking your childhood was fine because you had food in your belly, you had a roof over your head, you didn't get hit, but deep down you still feel like something was missing. You struggle to express your emotions. You feel guilty for ever needing support. You overthink everything and you feel emotionally disconnected from yourself. And the worst thing about it is you don't know why. Today we're going to talk about 7 signs which may indicate that you suffered emotional neglect. Because emotional neglect isn't always what happened to you. Sometimes it's what didn't. The comfort you didn't receive. The fact that love was earned and not just given naturally. The emotional safety that you never felt. And if this video resonates with you, please know you are not alone. Welcome back to the channel. So this is a space for healing, for nervous system regulation, self-awareness, and healing wounds that a lot of people don't see. The type of wounds that a lot of people carry with them silently. If that journey resonates with you, please hit subscribe and come and join our little healing corner of the internet. Now let's talk about the signs of emotional neglect and why most people don't start recognizing them until adulthood. So, the first sign is struggling to understand your own feelings, or struggling to identify those feelings. One of the biggest signs of emotional neglect is not actually knowing how you feel. Somebody might ask you, "Are you okay?" And you actually generally don't know how to answer that. Either your brain will go blank or you'll just automatically say, "I'm fine," even when you're feeling overwhelmed. Emotionally neglected children often grow up in situations where their feelings were never met. They were never taught how to express those emotions. Maybe their emotions were ignored or dismissed, or far too uncomfortable for the caregivers. So instead of learning that your feelings matter, you learned that feelings were inconvenient. And over time, many people completely disconnect from their emotions. This is called being emotionally numb, and it happens quite a lot with children that have experienced emotional neglect growing up. And it's not because these people don't have emotions. Everybody has emotions. They just weren't taught how to deal with those emotions, so they try and switch them off instead. And sometimes those types of people that are emotionally numb, when their emotions do come out, they come out as irritability, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, or maybe even shutting down. Because emotions that were buried alive don't stay buried. They don't disappear. They just change shape. Emotional neglect teaches children to abandon their feelings before they even know who they are. The second sign would be you feel guilty for ever having needs. Now I want you to ask yourself, do I feel guilty for ever asking for help? Do I apologize constantly? Do you tell yourself, "I'm probably overreacting"? People who have experienced emotional neglect often grow up believing their needs are too much. Maybe any time you experienced a negative emotion, so fear, anger, vulnerability, being upset, you were dismissed, or mocked, or criticized, or told that you were too much. So eventually you just stopped asking. You became independent far too early. You learned how to comfort yourself because nobody else was going to be there to comfort you, especially not emotionally. And now, as an adult, having emotional support probably feels really uncomfortable. You may struggle to rely on other people, struggle to ask for help. You probably even downplay your pain. And 9 times out of 10, you feel like a burden on people. But needing love or reassurance or comfort does not make you weak. That is a human need. We all need that in our lives, and you shouldn't feel ashamed for asking for it. So the third sign of emotional neglect is you overthink everything. Emotional neglect often creates chronic overthinking. Because when children grow up without emotional security, you'll often find that they overanalyze everything. They'll analyze a conversation, the way somebody spoke. Did I annoy them? Did I piss them off? What can I do next time to not make myself feel uncomfortable because of their reaction? And as an adult, you don't want to do that. You don't want to annoy anybody. You worry about frustrating other people. You'll overanalyze everything that's been said. You might even fear rejection, even if rejection hasn't happened. And why? Because as an emotionally neglected child, you often had to predict the emotional environment around you in order to feel safe. You learnt to read the tiny shifts in somebody's tone of voice, facial expressions, or even change of energy in the room. Your nervous system basically became a detective and was always searching for signs of danger. And as an adult, this can feel mentally exhausting. Your mind will become clouded with stories of what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? What happens if I say that? Are they going to say this? And you will struggle to relax because your body's always been on high alert. It doesn't know how to relax anymore. Peace can often feel unfamiliar, and sometimes chaos feels more calming. Sign number 4 would be you minimize your own pain. This is another major sign of emotional neglect, is constantly invalidating yourself. You'll probably say things like, it wasn't that bad, such and such had it worse than me, I should just get over it, maybe I'm overreacting. Even when you're deeply struggling inside, it's almost like you're trying to convince yourself that it's not as bad as it was. Many emotionally neglected children grow into adults that are constantly gaslighting themselves, especially emotionally. And the reason being is because their feelings were minimized so much as a child, it feels normal. Oh, it wasn't that bad. You're overreacting, get over it. And if your emotions were ignored for so long, you'll probably start ignoring yourself. And emotional neglect can be sometimes really hard to pinpoint because it's invisible. You can't see it, you can just feel it. It's hard to point to an absence, but imagine a plant growing without sunlight. Eventually, it's going to wither and it's going to die. That damage isn't drastic at first, but eventually, over time, you're going to see how that malnourishment is taking shape. And the same is for us emotionally. Children don't just need food and shelter, they need an emotional connection. They need validation and they need safety. Without those things, children will grow up feeling emotionally unseen, even if you guys don't recognize it, and people around them don't recognize it. Sign number 5, you feel deeply lonely even when you're surrounded by people. And this is one of the ones that a lot of people don't talk about, but you can be in a crowded room around a lot of people and even people who love you and still feel completely alone. And emotional neglect can follow you everywhere and leave you feeling lonely, even in your relationships, even around your family and your loved ones, even in crowded rooms. The problem is emotional neglect makes you feel disconnected from everybody around you, disconnected from loved ones, but most importantly, it leaves you feeling disconnected from yourself. You're probably the type of person that struggles to open up fully. Maybe you fear being vulnerable, and you probably feel like nobody actually knows the real you. Emotionally neglected people become amazing performers because they're constantly wearing a mask that's telling the world that they're okay, when that is so far from the truth. People that have experienced emotional neglect become performers of normality, smiling while emotionally feeling lost inside. And the worst part about it is most people don't even realize that they're starved of that emotional connection because they've never had it. So they don't realize that that's what it is. You cannot miss a language that nobody's taught you. So the 6th sign of emotional neglect in childhood is you like to please everybody around you. You become a people pleaser. Many emotionally neglected children grow up believing that love had to be earned. So they become helpers, they become fixers, they become caregivers. As an adult, they become emotionally available for everybody else but themselves. You may struggle to say no. You may struggle with the fear of disappointing somebody. You may struggle with the feeling that if you're not useful, you're going to be disregarded. And at the core of all that, you feel responsible for other people's feelings because, let's face it, somewhere along the way, your nervous system taught you that in order to feel safe. Maybe being easy or good or low maintenance got you approval. So now you instinctively shape yourself around other people's comforts, even when it hurts you. And constantly making sure everybody else is emotionally fulfilled and not yourself is exhausting. And I think the biggest tragedy about emotional neglect is that many people become incredibly compassionate towards other people, but they don't give themselves that same compassion. And this is the 7th sign that you probably were raised with emotional neglect as a child. You have this constant sense or this constant feeling that something is wrong with you. Now, this is probably the deepest sign of them all, because the problem is emotionally neglected children grow up into adults that automatically think, maybe I'm too much, maybe I'm not enough, maybe I'm the problem. There's probably something wrong with me. And not because somebody told this to you, but because emotional neglect sends an unspoken message to children. It tells them your inner world does not matter. And children naturally internalize this. They don't sit there and think, my caregivers couldn't give me the emotional support that I needed. What they think is, there's something wrong with me. I'm unloved. And unfortunately, that belief can follow people into adulthood, into relationships, into careers, into friendships. Always chasing validation, always trying to prove their worth. But your worth was never meant to be earned through suffering or perfection. You deserved emotional support long before you ever realized what it was like to go without it. If you recognize yourself in this video, please be gentle with yourself. Awareness can feel very heavy at first, especially when you realize that what hurt you wasn't always cruelty. Sometimes it was emotional absence. But identifying emotional neglect isn't about blaming others. It's about finally understanding yourself, but with a bit more compassion instead of shame. Healing begins when you stop minimizing your pain, when you stop seeing survival strategies as flaws, and when you start giving yourself the emotional safety that you needed as a child. And little by little, you start reconnecting with those parts of yourself that had to be silenced in order to be survived. Together, we are going to break that silence. If this video resonated with you, please let me know in the comments which sign resonated the most, which sign was the one that spoke to you. And if you are on a healing journey, please subscribe for more videos on healing trauma, emotional neglect, nervous system regulation, and learning how to finally feel safe being yourself. Thank you very much, guys, and please take care of yourself gently today. Lots of love.